Hi, objection handling stalls and objections, whatever you want to call it. These things are a natural part of the sales process, and we're going to be talking about the best way to approach these, both from a mental perspective and a practical perspective. So thank you for joining us here at Closers. I'm joined by Rosa from the great state of Texas in the USA. Hi, Rosa.
Hi, Ian. How are you doing?
I'm fantastic. Fantastic. I've been looking forward to this session for a long time because I know this is something that you've done a lot of work with your clients historically.
That is correct. Well, I was just, I think I was telling you that I've been in sales for 25 years. So I've encountered quite a bit of objections throughout my career. You know, you get to find them in all kinds of flavors. So I'm really looking forward to talking about this as well.
Yeah. So let's dive straight in. Objection handling. Can you just maybe set the scene for our audience and just try and maybe debunk a few myths that some people have, some misunderstandings that some people have around objection handling and things like what's the difference between a stall and an objection, and does it even matter?
So you're right. People think that objection handling or objections, right? They are just negative things, right? And so with negative things, you're right. People tend to either, they have the fight flight situation when as soon as you get an objection, you're either, post yourself to defend yourself, right? Like your product, you're good, you take it a bit personal. Even though you try not to, your body just reacts, right? Or you flight. You're like, oh, this is not my customer. And then you just don't know where to go, and you like trying to get out of the conversation. When in reality, the objection is not necessarily a negative one. The objection is a customer, I don't know you. The objection is, why are you calling me? Can you tell me who you are? You just suddenly, you're walking around your life and somebody just shows up in front of you and you're like, what's going on? And so just wanted to kind of start with that it doesn't have to be a negative connotation. What do you think, Ian?
I may be a little bit different because I think objections are very positive because I think in most cases, you call me sadistic if you like, but I think in most cases an objection is really a request for more information. If they had more information, if they had the context and all the details, in many cases the objection just disappears. And I always remember somebody telling me, forgive me, I cannot remember who it was, but somebody always told me, whatever your weaknesses are, turn them into the reason that they should be doing business for you. So whatever the objection is, flip it on its head and say, that's exactly why you should be dealing with us.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit more about that. I'm curious about what you mean by that.
Well, if somebody comes along and says to us, and I'm just going to use this one because it actually happened earlier this year, and that's another thing. I don't think prospects are particularly over creative when it comes to objections. There's not like 100 that if you could master maybe the top 6 that you're going to get, if you can master those top 6, it can literally be transformative. So, however, the concept of turning that on its head, the objection on its head, we had one particular inquiry, and this was from a B2C company. And as a B2B coaching and training provider, we don't normally do B2C. But when we actually did the discovery call, I could actually recognize lots of the pains that they were experiencing, we could actually genuinely help them with. And then, of course, the killer question comes up. And it's, when have you ever done anything like that with an organization similar to us? Right? And I just sat there and I said, well, we haven't, but that's exactly why you should hire us. And they just looked at me. And they said, what do you mean? And I said, well, if you want your salespeople to walk, talk, and squawk like all the other people, right, go and get that industry standard sort of training that the B2C people are going to teach you. We're not B2C. We don't want to be like that. We pride ourselves on helping your people sound and behave differently. Is that important to you? And of course, they went, yeah. So I just think with a little bit of practice and a little bit of forethought, there's lots of things that we could be doing as salespeople to actually counter scenarios like that. And just to be clear, Rosa, the first time I got hit by that, I was stumbling and struggling away. I had to go away and then work on, okay, well, how do I do this? How can I change it and make it, turn it into something positive? And then once I worked out the strategy, I had to go and practice the strategy.
Yes.
So there is no silver bullet, and none of the sales gurus and none of the sales experts popped out of their mother's womb being able to handle a stolen objection. We all had to go and learn and practice.
It's all about learning and practice.
Yeah.
I agree. And one of the things that I believe is very important is to be able to understand the objection, because I believe there are different types of objections, right? And it is very important to understand where it's coming from. In my case, most of the times, like you said, it's the customer wants more information. It's an emotional thing that they want to get. And so I like it when the customer gives you an objection. It's most of the time an emotional objection. They don't feel that they can trust you there. They don't feel like they know the information. And I don't think coming back with a very logical, very, rational answer is always the answer, because that's what I used to do. People used to come with an objection and they just didn't feel comfortable. And to try to make them feel comfortable, I was, like my husband used to say, to me, Rosa, if you do this, and they used to give me these instructions, and I'm like, I just don't feel comfortable. You giving me a rational explanation, it doesn't make me feel better, right? You have to encounter emotional objections with that, giving them the trust. And
Yeah.
I think that is understanding where it's coming from. I think it's part of the key of objection handling. What do you think?
So I think most salespeople are trained. Here's the objection, and then they get this one-liner.
Yeah.
And in my experience, what happens when the prospect hears the one-liner, it just becomes, it's almost too polished, too perfect, and almost in a way it's dismissive of the actual objection. And one of the things that I found to be much more powerful, and I know this is something that you're very good at and passionate about, is what I found to be more powerful is when somebody gives you some form of a prospect gives you some form of objection, but is to use some form of story, because I believe storytelling is a superpower for salespeople. And rather than going, your price is too expensive, coming back with, I'm sure you'll find when you talk to our other customers that they found the price was actually very good value for money, blah, 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 blah. It's just robotic. It is. And I just think that there's a much, if we just slow down, if we just slow everything down and don't panic and just start to tell a story, right, about the value, I think in that particular, well, I know it's just much more, it's almost like advanced level objection handling.
Yeah. And so I wanted to share with you, I put a little bit of a framework about what you're talking about. And I just wanted to show everybody how I look at objection in a very scientific way, if you might say. I believe objection handling happens all around the customer journey. Most people talk about objections during prospecting time, because that is, when you're starting to get to know the customer. But the objections happen during the proposal time, and you have to be prepared. And the scripts are different, from the prospecting objections to the proposal objections, all the way to the renewal objections, right? And so it is all throughout the customer journey. And so learning scripts, like you're saying, or one-liners, really doesn't prepare you for the entire experience. So one of the key frameworks I always like to share is there's three things that are very important. It is the tone that you use. When you're saying, when people give you an objection, you have to be careful about how your voice starts to change. The customer wants trust, right? They want to understand. And so if you get nervous and you start speaking really quickly and your, heart rate goes up, well, you're transmitting that information and that feeling towards your customer. And so don't transfer that feeling. And the only way to handle that, even though if you're feeling it, because you might be able to feel it, you're a human being, is think about the tone. I feel like you almost have to slow down, kind of like that Matrix.
Sure.
You feel like the bullet is coming to you and you got to slow down, because your voice has to share that kind of calm, that I'm here to help you type of situation. And also, I always believe that the inflection that you use in your tone is very important. Now, you and I probably know how to do it because we've been doing it, for 20 some years. But for the new salespeople, I want you to think that your inflection is very important. When you have that inflection that goes down, it shows that, oh, I understand what you're talking about. Oh, surely you don't have time. Like, you have to be able to, if you're going to say those one-liners, use that empathy, use the intonation down to shows, I understand you. If you want to, during negotiations, for example, always say, repeat and mirror what somebody says. So you mean this is expensive for you. You're not agreeing with a customer. All you're telling them is, I heard you. I'm listening to you, right? And that means the world to the customer, that you are listening to them. And then sometimes you're going to be a little bit of a challenger, right? When you get an objection, and then you use that inflection up a little bit to challenge a little bit that I believe that kind of just came out of the blue. And so I believe your tone and your empathy are really key parts that nobody talks about on the objection handling. It goes beyond the words. It's how you make the customer feel. So what are you thinking, Ian?
I think you're 100% correct. And I think empathy is listening, and empathy is so important. And again, I just feel it's very underrated, undervalued. And I think there's also a big difference between if you're working if we just take the SaaS environment and you're one of a team of outbound SDRs, and you are, let's be honest, most of these it's maybe their first or second job since leaving university. I think it's very difficult for them to empathize with their prospects because they've not had that life experience and business experience that the prospects had. And I think if we just teach them these, forgive my language, glib one-line scripts, I think we're doing them a disservice because we're almost setting them up for failure.
Yes.
Right. And there should be more effort to teach them, for example, things like a little bit of commercial knowledge. Right? It doesn't take much to put together a small program to train your people and give them the basics of commercial knowledge so they understand things like a balance sheet and a profit and loss, so that they, if anything comes up in a conversation about things like, well, any commercial terms, they can actually respond. And that's just one example. But I genuinely think if they spent more time after the sale with customer success, getting to know the customer and the problems and the impact that the solution had, again, I think they would have a greater understanding and then be able to have greater empathy with the prospect.
Yes. I have a quick story. You're talking about storytelling, but I have a quick story about that it really impressed me. And I didn't really understand when some of my students were asking me about empathy and about understanding where they're coming from, right? One of the key things for objections is that trying to understand where the customer is coming from. There's two things you can do. You can ask deeper questions, right? You can ask deeper questions to really know, because sometimes an objection, it's masked. Like people are telling you something that something bothers them, but something else is bothering them, right? Like, and that's a common, you and I, we go through that every day, right? But one of the things that, what quick story is, I was training this group of, and it was a food delivery company. And they had to do a lot of upselling. So they had to call a lot of owners of restaurants. Now, you know that as an owner of a restaurant, and if your restaurant is not very big, you're a busy person, right?
For sure.
And sometimes the owners of restaurants are not that college educated, they went to Oxford type of owners, right? And a lot of these kids that were out there going out to sales, they came out of great universities, right? They were hired by this great food delivery service. And they said, Rosa, we can't empathize with this person. They talk different than we do. They think different. And by the way, you know, when we think differently, we make assumptions very differently because we have different narratives that we grew up with, right? And they said, I can't possibly empathize with a restaurant owner because we've never owned a restaurant. We've never had to serve food. We've never had to cook because we come from a, you know, household that the cook was just already served. And that made me think, I'm like, wow, that's gotta be difficult for somebody to try to empathize when you find absolutely nothing in common, right?
For sure. And it's interesting. You're talking about you know, we all have our own beliefs, behaviors, or life scripts. And the other thing that I found is that a lot of salespeople, they have actually got their own objections in their head. And what happens is that they assume, you know, they think to themselves, well, if I was actually a prospect, I wouldn't buy this because it's red,
oh my God.
right? It's red, and I only like blue things, right? They assume that the prospect won't buy it because it's red. I'm not obviously using just an example there, but they assume, for example, and the most obvious thing and common thing is the price.
The price.
If they are uncomfortable selling that high ticket value, they perceive that the prospect will be uncomfortable buying that. And they're almost willing, the prospect, to say it's too expensive because they think it's too expensive and they want them to agree with them.
That's so amazing because I think people go already knowing that the customer is going to say, this is too expensive. And, you know, I'm going a little metaphysical here, but I feel like you're almost manifesting. You're almost, you know, predicting. And of course, if you think this is expensive, well, the customer is going to tell you this is expensive. It's such a mental. One time, one of my senior vice presidents comes to me and she goes, Rosa, how is it that you hardly ever have to get discounts? He goes, all the other sales managers do not like you because they're constantly asking me for discounts. And they always say, well, Rosa doesn't ask for discounts. And he goes, how do you do it? And I said, it's a mental exercise. It's my mindset. And they're like, what do you mean? I go, it is my value. It is my product. And I used to be very proud and say, you're paying 10% more because you're going to get my service. You're getting Rosa, somebody that's going to pick up the phone. Is going to fight for you. Is going to give you the best thing, you know? And I really believed it. So I do believe that it's a mindset. Like you have to, you know, get in there and truly believe it. Otherwise, your insecurities will show.
For
like
sure.
It's almost like that dog, right? Like you were saying,
Yeah.
I smell like I should be asking for discount, you know? And it's just all a mental situation.
Yeah, and I don't want to stray off topic, but one of the things I'm most passionate about is helping salespeople understand that they already have the silver bullet, the magic wand. They already have the sales superpower, and it's in here. It's right in here, right? Yeah. That's the sales superpower that they need. That's the thing that's going to have the biggest impact on not just their sales, but their career and their life. right? Stop looking for a magic wand or a silver bullet. Look inside. Look in here. This is your sales superpower. And the things that the words that you were using there, mindset and just belief and authenticity, that comes over when you're talking to the customer. And if somebody ever says to me, when someone says this is expensive, I either say one of two things, depending on how I'm feeling, which isn't very scientific and probably not good from a data-driven perspective. But I'll either say, if I'm half asleep, I'll say, absolutely, it's very expensive, right? Why do you think that is? And I'll just get them talking, right?
Yeah.
Or
absolutely. I agree. That comes with empathy, right? One of the exercises, because these kids were like, we can't empathize. We don't know how to do it. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to teach you empathy, which is, people are like, who are you, Oprah Winfrey? And I'm like, yeah, I have to be like that sometimes with trainers, you know what I mean? Because I have to teach them how to empathize. Believe it or not, the younger generations, is harder for them to empathize sometimes. And I said, just start with repeating the words that they're saying. Just start with mirroring what they said. The moment that you mirror what they said, you are listening, and that's where you start to empathize. You got to start by truly listening. Without listening, there's no understanding, right?
Yeah.
And so I always say, this is 10% higher than your competitor. And instead of panicking, because it's happened to me, right? I'm at the end of a negotiation with a big RFQ, big contract, long-term, and I'm against this competitor, and the purchasing person comes in to me and gives me a call, and very strong. He goes, you know what, Rosa? You have a good product, but you're 10% more expensive than the competitor. And I had to breathe, right? And I said, I am 10% more expensive than the competitor. Yeah. And then I was just quiet. And they were lost. They didn't know what to say. They were like, they got nervous. So because now they felt uncomfortable, because they felt, oh, maybe I'm asking for too much. You know what I mean? Like, that is the key. You're like, yes, I am more expensive. So what? Right? And he didn't expect that answer, of that confidence that I had, right? And he goes, well, what are you going to do about it? Now, he was ready to come and ask me for a 10% discount. So he started negotiating against himself. He goes, well, what can you do about it? And I go, well, what can I do about it? And he's like, because remember, a lot of the objections, people want you to kind of start responding to yourself, to get nervous, right? And he goes, well, I mean, I know you're not going to be able to give me 10%, but what can you give me? So he was just like, he negotiated against himself. And I go, okay, listen, what about 3%, 1% this year, 1% the second year? And then if you sign a 3-year contract, then I'll give you 2% on year 3. And you got 4%. And he went out happy. And I was like, okay. Because, it's just about that empathy and that repeating. Like, I am not going, don't ever argue, please. Don't ever argue with a customer.
But I genuinely believe, again, if sales superpowers your mindset, it's closely followed by listening. And too many of us think that we're listening, but we're not really. We're just pretending that we're listening and paying attention. And I always remember, and this is it, nobody will believe this, but I promise it's true. I went to, this was years ago, when we used to do this thing called visit customers. Right? And ironically, this was actually selling SaaS, but before I'd even heard of the word SaaS, right? And we done this partnership with Microsoft, where we're going to help their partners sell what was the original Office 365 product. Right? But as I said, in those days, it wasn't called Office 365. It was just some sort of software that they paid for every month. But, SaaS, I don't think SaaS had been invented at that stage. So I went out to see this managing director of this organization. And it was a typical Microsoft partner, not necessarily a huge organization. They had, I think, 5 salespeople in the local office to us. And I sat down and they knew I was coming to talk about this, blah, 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 blah. And the managing director said to me, "You're going to have to do me a discount. I've got 5 salespeople." And this was to put them on a year-long personal development program for sales. And I'm sitting there and I remember thinking to myself, I'm supposed to be the sales guru here. I'm supposed to be the sales expert. What am I supposed to say, right? But because I didn't see anything, and it wasn't, I was just thinking it through. What am I supposed to say? Right? And because I didn't see anything, the manager director turned around to me and he said, "God, you're good. I wish my salespeople were doing that." And I'm sort of looking like, wait, what happened there?
I love it. I love that story because it's so true.
And it wasn't that I was really good. It was just that I was so slow thinking on my feet. But that goes back to what you say. They almost talk themselves out of it sometimes.
Exactly. People always try to teach people how to just slow down. Again, there's the tone, right? Part of that tone, if that mental is, be quiet for 5 seconds. Count it in your head. 1, 2, 3. I promise you, they're going to start talking. They're going to feel nervous because people want something talking, right?
Yeah.
And because they're going to talk, they're going, back in the day, a big negotiator that taught me how to negotiate told me the person that speaks first loses, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm always like quiet for like 5 seconds. And then they start speaking and you're like, great. Why negotiation down, right? And it's almost fun. You're right. For me, I'm like, give it to me. What do you have for me, right? It's just like playing tennis for me. It's like, give it to me because I really want to understand. And I am a person that is very excitable, as you can see. I'm very passionate and I talk with my hands. But man, when I get an objection, I go, I speak very slowly. My voice goes down, maybe, like FM voice. And then people are looking at me like, what did I do to her? Because I just slow that. And it's key. Again, it's all not about the script, not about your response. It's about how you feel and make the customer feel, I am honest about this price. You can trust me about the service. What I'm telling you is true. That's that trust, that emotional impact that the customer wants to feel. And then they express it, it's like little kids. They express it with little objections. I don't want to, but it really means something many times behind that, right? So, but that's a really funny story about you just being quiet. You didn't know that was a technique.
Yeah, I'm definitely not that good. Another thing that I always say to salespeople, and hopefully it resonates with them, but maybe it doesn't. I always say to them, can you imagine when you ring somebody and they're still in bed? Now, you're on the telephone and you ring somebody, they're still in bed. I say, can you tell they're still in bed? And they go, sure. And I said, but how? Because you can't see them. You can't, you're not there. It's just the telephone line. And they just say, well, it's the energy or the lack of energy. And I say, exactly. Yes. So if the negative of energy is true, as in you could, and there's not necessarily anything negative about sleeping, but if it's true that you could feel the energy of somebody sleeping, it's also true that a prospect can feel the energy of you when you're passionate, when you're committed, when you're being honest, when you're being authentic, right? All of those things, when you're showing empathy, all of those things the prospect absolutely gets that. So, you know, if you do not go on to the call, right, you know, in the right mindset, the wrong energy is going down that telephone, right? The wrong energy is going through that email, and the prospect gets it.
And you know, that is so amazing, how much that energy is transferred, right? And again, we're getting all metaphysical, but I'm telling you, this is absolutely, the authenticity comes through. And again, purchasing is about trust, right? You and I know that. Like, it's about establishing trust. That is the first thing. And to be authentic is very important. I mean, sometimes I would get an objection, right? And I would be very authentic in the sense that people would call me on the phone back in the day, and I would be saying, like, I have a problem with your contract, or, you know, something, write an objection. And I will pick up the phone and I'll be like, hey, how are you doing? And people are like, why are you so happy? Right? And I said, I am happy because you're probably going to buy something from me. And if you buy something from me, it's going to be a great month. So that is why I'm happy. I'm not happy just because it's you. It's because what you're calling me can really mean for me, right? And people are like, God, Rosa, you're super honest about this. And I said, I gotta be honest. I said, you know, before I used to have to sell in front of like a big stakeholder room, right? Like sometimes they put you in front of this huge stakeholder room and there's 3 competitors and you have to go do your spiel and they give you 20 minutes, right? And I would walk in and I would put the picture of my little baby there. And I would go like, he goes, oh my gosh, what's that? I said, that's Gabriela. She needs to go to college. I go, so think about that. And then they would get relaxed, you know?
Yeah, Gabrielle is my accountability partner. Like, if I mess up today, Gabrielle is going to give me it in the neck when I get home.
Exactly. So I'm going to tell you this. People are going to come and telling you that they are not salespeople. I am telling you, I'm here to sell you. So let's start talking about what can we do, right? And so that disarms them, right? That gives them the freedom, the space to give you the objections right up front and to tell you how they feel and not to mask it, because sometimes they give you an objection and you try so hard to fix that, whether it's a feature, whether it's the price, whether it's the delivery, whatever it is, right? And you're trying to fix that and you never really learn there was something else really behind it, right?
Yeah.
They just didn't know how to express that something was bothering them, right?
Yeah.
And that is because customers, believe it or not, they give you a lot of excuses, which brings me back to, what are objections? Not all objections, right, are objections, right? There's rejections, right? There's just a plain, no, I don't need you. And we gotta pick up on that as well, right? And then there is a deflection, right? There is that, you know what? I don't know how to tell you this, so I'm going to tell you that I'm busy. But I don't know how to tell you this, but I'm going to tell you that I don't have time. I don't know how to tell you this, but I'm going to tell you I have one already. I don't need another one, when you might not even have, right? And so that is the key to be able to understand, what are those types? Is it a deflection? Is plain no? Is it not now, right? Or is it, I don't know how to tell you, I want to be polite, but you caught me at a wrong time, right? Like, don't you think? I mean, what are your experiences?
No, absolutely. I think I read somewhere the phrase is smokescreen objections. You've got your genuine objections and you've got the smokescreen objections. And I don't know if you would agree with this, but typically, in my experience, the smokescreen objections are much more, there's more of them at the start of the sales process, in that prospecting phase, that no need, no money, they've all got money. If the lights are on and the toilet's flushing, they've got money. They're just choosing not to spend it with you, right? So, no money isn't, for me, it's not really a a valid excuse or objection. But I think the longer you go down the sales process, they will start to, because if we're doing our job right, trust will build up, and they're more likely to tell you the real objections rather than those smokescreen ones as you get through the sales process. But I think for most people, they just assume that objections are really at the start of the sales process, but in reality, if you send somebody a cold email and they hit delete, that's an objection. That's an objection. It's a form of objection. Right? Your message didn't resonate with them. If you telephone them, if you do an outbound call, and for whatever reason you get through, you do get past the gatekeeper, and you talk to the decision maker, and they say no need, no money, whatever it is, those are all objections. But it goes back to what you said right at the start. They don't know, like, and trust us at that point. And we've got to figure out, how do we know, like, and trust? And the other, maybe the secret ingredient on top of this is relevance.
Oh my gosh, relevance. I love that you're going to bring it up. Can I show you something I put together here?
Yeah.
It is this. The best way to handle objections for me is to prevent them, right? To anticipate what is coming up. For me, people ask me, how do you handle objections? I try to prevent them from happening. Like, I want to think, what if I were you, right? What would you ask me? Anticipate, and I want to learn everything about you to be able to respond to you, because I know that you're going to be curious about this, you're going to be curious about that, and you're going to be curious about things. So for me, to anticipate objections, even from the beginning, if you're going to make a phone call, right, and you know you're going to call a restaurant owner, don't call them during lunchtime, right? Anticipate what's going to be the situation. So that's one of the things that for me is critical, Ian, is to be able to be relevant and to learn about the customer. Because the technique that most people will tell you is you listen, you empathize, right? You repeat, you mirror, and then you immediately ask them a question, but it has to be relevant. If you're just taking a script, then it shows to me that you didn't even care. Like, if you don't care about taking 3 minutes to learn who I am, then it's just probably I'm not going to trust you right off the bat. And so trying to pick up something that is relevant. It happened to me, back in the day, right? You were telling stories. When I was a baby salesperson, but 24 years ago, I remember 2000, they gave me a territory and they gave me existing accounts and they gave me a whole list of new logos, right? New customers that I had to go. And guess what, Ian? Back in the day, LinkedIn, well, you know what LinkedIn was about? It was to go look for jobs. There wasn't any LinkedIn. I couldn't find out about who you were unless I knew your cousin and you were in my town. It was very hard for me to find out who you were, what did you like, where did you go to school. We really didn't have all that information. And so when we called, it was truly a cold call. There is no excuse now not to look it up in LinkedIn. I wish I had. I think like my life would have been so much easier. Maybe I wouldn't have learned my techniques if I had it this easy, right? But I had to learn about what was about this company. And I always have this recommendation. When you go talk to somebody, learn about the person. Go find out what posts that they put out there. Did they express any concern? It will take you 3 minutes to go out right now and find out something about the person. If this person is completely behind, under the radar, there is nothing out there, which doubtly you can find something like that, then immediately look at the persona. What is the title that they have? What are the typical responsibilities that a person like this have? What are the typical pains? Go in with some kind of hypothesis of potential pains, of potential metrics that they have to go through, right? Be relevant, do that extra step and learn. If you cannot find that persona, and back in the day, I couldn't find about them. So I had to find about, okay, a person that is the operations manager in a small town, what do they go through, right? And I learned my competition. The competition doesn't give them this, doesn't give them that. And so I walked, and sometimes it wasn't the case, but like my father used to say, you start playing chess, you got to start with a strategy, like something, right? Like you got to start with something. You can't just like move, right? And so for me, that is the one thing I want to make sure that everybody learns from here. You gotta have something relevant for them to stop and think, oh, how do you know that, right? And that means that and all this happens in your main. Like if for me, and if I get another cold email that says, we help sales coaches like you gain $20,000 a month, I can probably be a millionaire if I give you $10 for each of those emails that I get. I'm like, seriously? Come on.
Yeah. The other one I get, Rosa, is it's something like, I really admire your blog post on such and such and such. So they've obviously got some sort of AI, right, to find out that I've written a blog post. But I'm thinking to myself, well, if you really admire me, right, which straight away as an adjective makes me very suspicious, right? Yeah, admiring a complete stranger, right? But if you're going to say, well, something like, I really admire your blog post, right? You need to refer to something in the blog post to demonstrate that you've actually read it. You didn't just run your AI tool through it, right? Because, prospects are smart, and prospects can see, I'm starting to learn how to see through AI, right? And it's much as I love AI, it's not as easy as everybody seems to think it's going to be, where they're just going to plug a database and off it's going to go and sell itself. It's, people buy from people, Rosa, right? AI is a great tool, but people buy from people. And to your point about doing some research, I'm amazed. I still get people who ring up, and sometimes I obviously answer the phone. We're not a big business here. I quite often answer the phone and say, can I speak to the person responsible for blah, 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 blah? And you think to yourself, have you not done any research? Right? Have you not done any research? And then at some point they'll say, what is it your business does? And you think, so could you not even open a web page? Right?
I know. It's so easy. There is absolutely no excuse for that anymore. Like back in the day when we had to go visit customers, right? It was harder for us, right? Like for us back then, I think we walk into an office and I had to look at all the pictures. Okay, he likes fishing. Ooh, he went to that school. Like that was my research back then. It was and it had to be faster, but it's incredible.
And I've got to point out, Rosa, SDRs, I always say to SDRs, it's the most difficult job in business. Don't let anybody try and tell you otherwise. Sitting on the phone all day long doing outbound calls is the most difficult job, and I'm full of admiration for them. However, if you're a manager of a team of SDRs, if you're allowing them to ring up a business and say, hi, can I speak to the business owner, please, or whatever, if that's the best that you can do, with the greatest respect, right, that's the problem, not the SDR. The problem is the management of these guys, by allowing them or telling them this is an effective strategy, because it's not an effective strategy. Time, for any SDR out there will know that time is the most valuable resource, and being busy, right, just because you're doing 100 hours a day doesn't mean that you're being effective. You've got to work out what's effective and what's going to move the needle, right? And we'd all rather have an SDR do one call a day, one call an hour, if you got a sale, if you got a 100% success rate. It's not, movement does not equal results.
movement doesn't equal results. Absolutely. You have to be able to constantly train your SDRs, being able to have these conversations back and forth. I would say just role play. Start with your day by role playing 5 times with your SDRs, because it just helps, to get that muscle memory. And I used to cold call quite a bit, at the beginning of my time. And then I cold call a little less, right? And then back when I was in leadership, well, I hardly ever cold call, right? Because then that's just not how it works. But when I started my own consulting firm, which was not too long ago, I thought, oh my gosh, I have to cold call. How do we do this? It's a muscle. And my muscle had not worked in a long time. Right now, do I have all the scripts? Yeah. Do I have all the lines? Yeah. And I started looking up in the internet. I'm thinking, okay, what do you do again? And I tried to study and I'm thinking, well, that doesn't work. Well, I'm not going to tell this line, And I thought, do what used to work for you, which is just do the research and be curious about the customer. Be authentic about what their problems could be. And sometimes a no is a no, right? Don't try to push a customer that you qualify as a no just because your manager is telling you, just send it over to the AE. Because you got to learn to recognize that a no is a no. And you have to recognize a not now. I mean, not too long ago, and I'm saying not too long ago, a couple of months ago, I had to do a cold call, right? And I had somebody says, okay, I will listen to you. And we got into the video and the person was like this. I mean, it was just like, and I go, oh my goodness, I haven't handled one of these. And for me, like you, Ian, is like, how long is it going to be for me to gain the trust, right? Like for me, is an opportunity. This is not at the beginning. I was like, it actually brought a smile to my face. Like this, I was like, okay, I can do this. This is what I'm good for, right? First of all, they felt that I was truly excited about this, right? And he looks at me, he goes, listen, I don't have that much time, so just go for it. Most people get really nervous, right? I don't have that much time, so just tell me. And I said, listen, you're probably not my customer. I might not be able to help you. I do sales and I increase sales. That's what I do. But I want to know about you. You seem to be a software developer company that started in 2020. It's 2024 and you have 150 employees. That tells me that your growth was unprecedented. Not only your growth is unprecedented, but I probably have 15 software development companies just in my neighborhood here in Austin. What makes you different? I just want to know. And man, the guy went, let me tell you about me. And he just, it went from, I don't have any time took the 30 minutes. He didn't want to hang up because I was truly curious. I truly wanted to know, obviously you don't need my help. And I said, listen, right now you're doing okay. It's a CEO sales, but you will need my help. I'm going to predict 3 months from now because you're not going to be able to handle it anymore. I said, just give me a call. He goes, yes, please send me your note. I want to learn about from you. And for me, that was a not now. It wasn't a waste, right?
Yeah.
It was, I'm going to call him 3 months from now, but now he's going to pick up and he's going to be happy to talk to me because I care about him, right? And I was honest with him. So I think that's a strategy that works. What do you think?
100%. And I'm just going to go back a little bit to the R word, which can be quite controversial. Role play. I get the sense that you're like me, that I read somewhere role play is the breakfast of champions. I think is utterly irresponsible for a business to be spending money on brand marketing sales to get salespeople in front of a prospect, whether that be telephone in front or physically in front or Zoom call in front. But I think it's irresponsible to spend all that money and not have the salespeople practice before they actually get on the call in the form of role play. However, the number of times that when we're putting together training programs and we mention role play, it's like, no, we can't do that. We can't do that. And my perspective is, and this is a belief, so I could be wrong, but so you're welcome to challenge me. My belief is that if a salesperson does not have the confidence to do role play in what I would describe as a safe environment, as in there are no prospects to shout at you or slap you or whatever, right? They're never going to have the confidence that they really need to in what I describe as the heat of the battle. When they're in the C-suite, engaged with the C-suite, they're just not. They don't have the confidence that they need, and I quite frankly think a lot of people are kidding themselves that I just don't like role play. It's just not for me, right? No, right? It's if you're in sales, to me, role play is just essential.
It's so funny. I'm such a fan of role play that even if I'm in a happy hour with my girlfriends and one of them have a problem with their kid, I'm like, okay, let's role play. I'm your kid, you're the mom. What are you gonna say? I mean, it literally works everywhere in life, right? Like every time I have to go and ask for something or I have a conflict. Oh my gosh. If you're not this is why I think sales managers sometimes they are conflict avoidance. When you can really just walk in it and say, let's role play. And if you do a lot of role plays, you start loving it because you really, I think you start loving it. And now my friends, actually, and family members come to me. I'm like, hey, Rosa, I want to do a role play about this. And now, now I'm like, because I have taught them that this is the only way to go. Don't practice on your customers. You're right. Why are we spending this amount of money for you to practice? Right? It's like, it's like soccer, football. Like, we're going to practice, practice that's role play, right? Yeah. We're role playing these 6 people against these 6 people, 12 people, right? That's what athletes do. Yeah. Practice. It's just role play.
That's what professionals do. Do you think Messi and Ronaldo and Pele and all the other greats, do you think they turn around and say, no, I'm not doing the practice. I'll just turn up 3 o'clock on Saturday. I'll be there, right? I don't do the practice. Trust me, I'll be good enough on Saturday. Come Saturday, you can trust me. No.
Yeah, I'll do good. I know. I like it. Imagine he has Messi saying, yes, I don't need to practice. Oh, practice is not for me. Or like, just tell me what the play is going to be and I'll try it over there.
Yeah. I'll try it in the cup final on Saturday. Just tell me what the play is.
Tell me the tactics.
I'll test it out live.
Yes, let me test that try during the World Cup, during the Copa America. I like Copa America anyway. Yeah, but I am a sports fan, so I always think the sports is like sales. Sales is like a sports, practice and practice is what really makes you perfect. And how are you going to practice unless you just do it? And in this case is, practice the objection, practice your tone, practice how are you going to sound like. I used to record myself and I was thinking, ooh, I talk too fast. I gotta slow down. And it was funny because it gives a different vibe. And for sales managers, and I'm deviating this a little bit, record those prospect calls, please. And pay attention, not on just the words, but the delivery, right? Like, how do they sound? Do they sound comfortable? Do they seem nervous? You can pick up that in a recording. And when I've trained people, people are like, okay, so tell me, what should I say? Did I say everything correct? And I say, you said everything correct. The only advice I have is just slow down when you talk. And the next week they came back and it's like, Rosa, I closed 2 new deals. And I said, what did you do? I just slow down. I go, sometimes it's just as simple as that. So take those recordings during prospects, and not just don't get married about the script, right? Think about also how they feel and the delivery.
Okay, Rosa, I'm conscious of time.
Oh my goodness.
Just 60 seconds, couple of minutes. For anybody listening, give me 1, 2 practical things that they can do to take away that would improve their objection handling. Just 1 or 2 things before we close here.
Okay. First thing, the moment an objection comes, right? First of all, try to avoid them. Go do the research. Then, as soon as an objection comes, slow down, repeat what they said. You gotta let them know that you heard them. So practice the mirroring part, right? And practice the tone that you use during this mirroring. Are you going to be empathetic? Or you just want to say, I hear you, I don't agree with you, right? Just learn how to mirror. And then immediately after mirroring, ask the question that is relevant to them because you've done the research, right? Breathe, mirror, and go back and ask the question only if it's relevant to them. That's the 3 points I would have to say.
Love it. Love it. And just one thing from me, and again, I keep going on about, what's going on up here at the Sales Superpower. Too often, I see and I hear when I do the call listening as well, Rosa, mentally, what I would describe, when the prospect voices an objection, the salesperson is mentally flinching. And the prospect, that we talked about the energy, the prospect can feel that. And it's like they're sensing a gotcha moment, and they're like piling in. Whereas my suggestion, anybody, right, the minute you get an objection, you need to be going up the way. You need to go, yes, this is good. This is a request for more information. It's a natural part of the sales process. Right? I'm on my way here. I'm on my way. This is a good thing. So you've got to think positive, right? Thinking negatively never wins anybody anything positive. Nothing positive can come out of anything negative. So thinking negatively will just lead you to more self-doubt, more anxiety, etc., right? Think positive, and positive things will happen, right? Thank you so much, Rosa.
Thank you so much, Ian. It was such a fun pleasure being here with you, talking about objections.
Let's do this again.
Let's do it again.
Let's do this again, okay? Thanks so much, Rosa. Thank you.
Thank you very much.